It's the end of the year, and if you're like many entrepreneurs, you're probably staring ahead into the future and trying to figure out how to set goals for next year. But before you do that, my friends, I want to encourage you to look back and evaluate the year that you just walked through. What did you learn? Today, I want to share with you the very valuable evaluation process that I use that helps me create my path forward for the new year. Let's get started.
Hey there, this is Corinna Bench, and welcome to the My Digital Farmer podcast. In today's market, it's not enough to just grow your product. You've got to know how to sell it too. Welcome to the My Digital Farmer podcast, where we reveal online marketing strategies and tips to help farmers like you get better and more confident at marketing. Learn how to find more customers, increase your sales, and build a strong brand for your farm. Let's start the show.
Well, welcome to episode 241 of the My Digital Farmer podcast. I am your host, Corinna Bench, one of the farmers at Shared Legacy Farms out in Elmore, Ohio. I'm also the founder of MyDigitalFarmer.com, which is all about trying to help other farmers like you get more confident in your marketing and sales strategy so that you can grow a profitable business online. How's everyone doing today? Welcome back to the show, especially to all of my regular listeners. And if you're new to the podcast, thanks for checking it out today. I think you're going to get a lot of value from this episode. Make sure you subscribe to the show and go check out some of my back archives. I have so much good stuff here that will basically give you a really good education in farm marketing. I especially encourage you to check out the first 10 episodes if you're pretty green when it comes to marketing, because I designed them to be an onboarding ramp into this space. Another place you can go is get onto my email list, because when you do, I'm going to basically walk you through a curated selection of lessons and teachings and resources each week for about 3 months. That's going to give you a good crash course in farm marketing. So you can get on that list for free by subscribing at mydigitalfarmer.com/subscribe. Today's podcast is sponsored by my friends at LocalLine. Is it time to upgrade your e-commerce platform? I have just the solution for you. If you're still using generic e-commerce like Shopify or Squarespace for your farm sales, it's time to start using LocalLine. LocalLine is the all-in-one sales solution for farms and food hubs. And we've been using LocalLine as our e-commerce of choice for over 4 years, and we couldn't be happier with the software. The team is constantly updating and releasing new features, such as subscriptions functionality, a low-cost website builder, customizable storefront, and integrations with tons of marketing and sales apps such as ConvertKit, MailChimp, and even TextMagic. Unlike other farm e-commerce options, LocalLine is very affordable with no additional sales fees or hidden percentages. They also offer high-impact, low-cost marketing services now for farmers. So you can have LocalLine write your email newsletter, run your Facebook ads, or create your social calendar, all at a very affordable price. For podcast listeners, LocalLine is offering a free premium feature for a whole year when you sign up using my coupon code. So why not try it out today? Head to mydigitalfarmer.com/LocalLine. That's mydigitalfarmer.com/LocalLine, LocalLine, and enter the coupon code MDF2023. And now back to the show. It's December. I hope you're trying to take some time off. Here over at Shared Legacy Farms and with the Bench family, we are making a concerted effort for this month to dial it down a little bit when it comes to work and give some more time to family and traditions. And so that means that we are taking a couple of vacations this month. We have several holiday traditions that are really special to us as a family that we'll make sure happen. And I'm taking some time off from the farm as well as from Digital Farmer. So we are doing our free 5-day CSA Startup Challenge here at the beginning of December. And if you haven't had a chance to sign up for that, if you want to be a CSA farmer and you need some guidance, I'm walking new rookie farmers through that process of how do you set up your first CSA, and I'm breaking it up into 5 days of content. You can take that challenge for free at any time by going to mydigitalfarmer.com/CSA startup. So we finished that challenge. It's been really fun, and I'm kind of continuing to coach people through that a little bit here as we wrap up. But other than that, I've really been trying to relax and reflect on my year. It's important for me to do that because that's when I make my big discoveries and when I set myself up for a really good launch for next year and with some direction and guidance. So one of the things that I have been working on this month is my annual reflection and evaluation process. And this is something that typically takes me about 4 to 5 hours to complete. I usually break it up into 2 different days. And I wanted to spend an entire podcast episode reviewing that process with you because it is so powerful when you take the time to do it. And I actually did an episode all about this last year around this time. And so as I was sitting down to prepare what I wanted to say, I thought to myself, I know I did this last year. I'm going to go listen to that podcast episode and see if it's still just as relevant as ever or if it's dated and it sounds like something I did a long time ago. And so I went and listened to it and I'm like, man, this is so good. I don't know if I could replicate this or make this better or really add a whole lot of extra material to it. And then I decided rather than trying to repeat myself in a whole nother episode, basically saying a lot of the same stuff, that I would just take that episode and rebroadcast it today. And so that's what I'm going to do. This was originally episode 191. I released it in December of 2022. And so if you're a longtime listener and you heard that, you may be like, oh, I don't need to hear this again. But I want to challenge you. I want to say, you know what? Listen to it again. I'm going to put it right here in this podcast because I think it's going to speak to you in a different way than it did last year. And it's going to bring some stuff up. This process is so good, so valuable. And I have done day 1 of this process so far. And I still have the second part to do, which is where all the discoveries and the goal setting really happen. And I want to make sure that you do it. So without further ado, I'm going to drop the former episode 191 into the podcast. I'm going to encourage you to listen to it, take it all in, and take some action steps after you hear it. I want you to spend some time and go through this process. I'll make sure I put the journaling questions that I use to evaluate my year in the show notes for today at mydigitalfarmer.com/241 so that you can go grab them there. This is going to make you think, and you're going to learn a ton about yourself. I can't wait to see what you discover. Okay, so let me drop that recording into the podcast. Here we go. Today, I'm actually really excited about this topic. I was sharing this information with my accelerator, my small group coaching program for farmers, with my accelerator students a few weeks ago. We're actually taking the month of December off. Every month we build a different marketing asset together. I teach them how to do it, and then I give them some coaching, and then we have like a mastermind element. And this particular month of December, we're taking off for vacation time, but I was sharing with them some different ideas and questions for how they can be beginning the process of setting goals for next year. And I thought to myself, well, I want to share some of this on the podcast too. So today I am going to kind of walk you through my process for how I begin to set goals for the next year. This is actually a much longer process, but I'm just going to kind of share part 1 with you today. And this is something that I've been doing for the last few years, which has, I believe, significantly helped me in manifesting some pretty awesome things, not only in my business, but in my life. Some of that is also because I have a coach that works with me on this stuff and holds me accountable. But this process of taking the time to evaluate my year and my work and to think intentionally and proactively about what do I want to accomplish is a huge reason, I think, for why we're doing so well in our business. And it's a great time to do it. It's a natural time to want to do this because we're coming to the end of the year. But sometimes this process, if you're listening to this episode in July, sometimes it's really helpful to do this in a different time of year, especially if you feel like you're struggling a little bit with direction and purpose or results, frankly. It might just be that you haven't really thought about what you want. What do you want? And where are you going? And what are you good at? And what are all the signs telling you, right? So anyway, I think it's important to spend some time reviewing your year. Number one, because it helps me see what I did. What did I actually accomplish? What did I do? I celebrate. I can see all of the progress that I've made when you take the time to actually look at it. So many of us don't do that. We just keep moving forward and we forget all the things that we've already done. But I like doing this too because it makes me think about what I've learned. It makes me reflect and tie up those loose ends. And then I'm more likely to repeat those lessons that I've learned in the future when I can notice them. So I notice what I did well to make sure that I repeat them. And I also can see the things that I quote unquote failed at, right? The mishaps. And I find ways to make sure that I see those as necessary parts of the journey, right? They were a part of where I'm going to end up, and I won't be able to end up in my promised land unless I go through some of those mishaps. So let's make sure that we stare them in the face and that we learn from them, right? So we don't make them again. And that's one of the things I love about this process is I really take the time to see and reflect on like what didn't go well, so I can move forward and take that learning with me into the future. I also pay attention to things like what is zapping my energy in my business and in my life, not just my business, but my life, and what's giving me energy. And once I kind of look at all of these different things through these questions I'm going to share with you here, it really gives me direction. I find that this process will help me uncover themes that are resurfacing. Some of these questions, as I go through them here in a second, revisit the answers that you go through in earlier questions, but I don't think that's a bad thing. Like writing some of this stuff down multiple times actually will help you catch the lesson you're supposed to learn. So by the time you finish this process, at least this is how it works for me, by the time I finish this process of working through these questions and reflecting and evaluating, I feel like I have a really good handle on what I want to do next year. And that's kind of how I get unlocked. I used to not have a process for this. I used to just go into the next year and try and just set some random goals. Sometimes I wouldn't even set goals. But I didn't set those goals out of a process of reflection. And so I just find that now it's so much better and it's so much richer because I've taken the time to really walk around these different questions I'm going to share with you. And then when I make these goals, they're more in depth. They're more centered in my spirit because I'm like, yeah, this is where the energy's at. This is where I was making the revenue. This is where the future is going. Like I just have confidence. So I'm excited to do this with you. I have already finished this process for my own farm business. I've also done it on my digital farmer business. And so now I'm getting ready after working on this. My next step is to kind of build out my promotional calendar, which is going to be really easy to do based on the work that I've done here. My goal for today is number one, to share the questions with you. I think it's about 10 questions. And I hope that you'll write them down. I hope that you will take them and actually go spend some time before the new year reflecting on them and doing the work that I'm going to be sharing with you as well, and see if it helps you. Now, I don't think you're going to connect with all 10 questions. Maybe you really only connect with 4 of them. That's okay. Don't feel like you have to do them all, but I would like you to give a stab at all of them and then go through it kind of one time. And at the end of the process, reflect on the evaluation process itself. Be like, okay, what was actually helpful? Like, what were the questions that really got me thinking? And then the next time you do this, you can kind of take out the questions that you don't think were super helpful. That's okay. Make this what it needs to be for you. But my hope is that it will actually give you some homework to do here, that it will be something you spend some time doing in the next few days. So the way that I prep myself for this process, because I usually set about 2 different time blocks aside to do what I'm going to share with you today. And I would say that each of those time blocks has taken me about 2 hours. That's me. Now, I'm pretty intense and I really spend some time on this, but I do think it's important for you to block out some time. Now, this can be just you. It could be just one person going through the exercise, especially if you're a solopreneur. But if you have a business partner, you may want to take these questions, work on them yourselves a little bit, but then bring them to maybe like a retreat setting. Maybe go off site and spend a day working through these questions together as you try to map out where your business is going. I think that if you have a partner that you're working with, doing something like this together is going to make a huge difference in your collaboration and how you work together in the future, because you're going to have a sense of anchoring on, this is why we're doing what we're doing next year. This is why it's important. It's coming out of this place of strength, this work that we did together. And you'll have some more clarity. Okay, so I do encourage you to set aside a block of time, maybe even go somewhere that's outside of your home, outside of your farm, and work on it. I think you'll have better results. You may want to bring along some Post-it notes, or find a place that has a whiteboard, or bring along one of those giant, massive sticky posters. You know what I'm talking about? They're like these flip charts that actually stick to the wall. This might be a project like that where you want to write stuff out onto giant sheets of paper as you go through it. I personally do this all in journaling. So I have a big journal that I work through, and then we talk about this stuff, my husband and I, in a kind of a group meeting. All right, let's do this. Are you ready? First question. List everything that happened in the last 12 months related to your business. This is a massive brain dump. All right. This includes your wins, your losses, your accomplishments, experiences you want to write down. This also includes statistics or data that you want to collect. So I actually went into my local line reports and took a look at some of the data and included that in this section. This could include relationships that you formed. It could be relationships that you discontinued. It could be mistakes, mishaps, events, whatever you think should go on this list. And this took me about 30 minutes. This was actually the longest part of the process, was just trying to remember everything. One of the things that I actually did was I pulled out my calendar from last year and I kind of laid it all out, and that helped me kind of see what some of the events were that had happened and experiences, but also some of my promotions, because I forget what they all are, right? So if I go back and look at some of my history, that can help. So I'm going to give you just some examples of what this was for my farm, just to get your mind spinning, to help you see. And you don't have to be writing long paragraphs, right? This is like a bunch of bullet points, and enough to just jog your memory and remind you, oh yeah, that happened. So I wrote down, we hired an H2A crew for the first time. Okay. I didn't go into all of the details about how that was at times a struggle and what we learned from it. I just said, hired H2A crew. That is enough for me to remember, oh yeah, that was a pretty big deal for us. I included things like new habits that I started. So journaling, collecting sales data, and logging it into a Google Sheet. Those were new things I started doing this year that were pretty huge. Capital investments, I included those on the list. So a concrete pad for the wash bay, for instance. New relationships. So I did a podcast with Brooks Hitsfield from Seven Sons a few months ago. And in the process, we got a tour of his place and it really established a good relationship with him that I feel like something's going to happen with that in the future. And I don't know what, but I wrote that down because that was really valuable to me. It could be personal time. Okay, so I know the original question says, list everything that happened in the last 12 months related to your business. But I include a few things that would fall under my personal category because they relate to my business. So for example, you guys have heard me talk about this, but my husband and I and our kids, we took a vacation in the middle of the season and went to Oshkosh for the big aviation show that's there every year. And that was an example of us living in abundance, which is something I'm trying to practice more of. I have talked about that on the podcast in the past, that I'm really trying to move away from like a feeling of scarcity. Oh, there's not enough. What if I don't have enough next year? I better hold on to it. And instead trying to like reward myself and live in the moment more and be present more instead of always worrying about what's coming in the future. I want to live the future now. And so the fact that we took a vacation in the middle of the season was a huge victory for us. I wrote that down because to me that was a big thing that happened. It did impact our business. It was a business decision in a way. It was a moment where we said we will not let the business rule our lives. The business works for us, not the other way around. And so we're going to have a vacation. So that went in my list. Noteworthy mistakes. So things like when I was looking at the data, the number of new online store customers was really low in my opinion, especially considering the fact that I technically had that on my goals last year. So it's kind of like, didn't do that so well. So there's no judgment. I just wrote it down. I'm like, that's interesting data, interesting information. So write down mistakes or mishaps, things that misfired. Any kind of sales data, maybe your email list growth or any other kind of data you can collect from your software systems. The point is, this is going to be quite a list and it's going to be all over the map, and that's okay. We just want to have it all down. Okay. So that's the first question. And you're going to get a lot out of that because you're going to feel a sense of accomplishment. You're going to be like, wow, look at all the stuff I did. It's going to fill like 3 pages and you're going to feel really good about that. You're also going to see some things that, oh yeah, that's something I need to work on. There's going to be things that are rubbing you the wrong way. And some of that stuff is going to inform what you want to do next year in the future as you set your goals. Okay. Second question. What were the lessons that you experienced that you can take into the next year? So what did you learn? Now, this is also another 30-minute process for me. This is another big hunkin' question. It takes me time, but this is where the magic's at. I want you to try and focus on your personal growth and the wisdom and the insights that you gained. So consider that everything happens for you. I just want you to wrap your head around that for a second. What if things don't happen to you, but everything is actually happening for you? Because every experience in your life, even the quote unquote mishaps and bad stuff and failures, are there to teach you something, are there to get you to the next step. And you have to fall into those potholes because it's the only way that you'll get to where you want to go. I tell my accelerator students in my coaching program that I think we have a tendency to, this is like a hiking metaphor. When we're hiking a mountain, we might think in our minds like, oh, the best way to get to the mountain peak, if I'm trying to get to the summit, is just to take a straight line from point A to point B. That's the fastest way to get to the summit. But in reality, trying to get to the summit in a straight line is always impossible. Like there's just roadblocks. There's things that get in your way that you can't get over. And in reality, what ends up happening is that we take the switchbacks. We switchback our way up the mountain. And it takes a heck of a lot longer. If you've ever hiked and you've done the switchback, you know what I'm talking about. And so I think in our business, when we run into a pothole or a speed bump or some kind of a quote unquote failure, we can really beat ourselves down and be like, oh man, why did I waste time doing that? Why did I let that happen? when instead I want you to see those parts of your list that you just wrote down, all the things that happened to you in your business, those mishaps, I want you to look at them as switchbacks. They are switchbacks, and they are just part of the journey too. And they are a necessary part of the journey, and you were meant to learn something from them. Okay? So as you're doing this section, what were the lessons of each thing that you experienced? I want you to just take that philosophy. Okay? So you're going to see the risks that you took, the new things that you tried that worked out really well, and you're going to have some awesome positive lessons from that. Like, pull out the nugget. What did you learn from taking that risk? But you're also going to have plenty of things that didn't go right, that didn't go well. You're going to beat yourself up about them. And I want you to pull out the lesson. What were you supposed to learn from that process? And what did you learn? And write it down. The example for me that jumped out when I worked on this was the whole H2A risk that we took by hiring 4 H2A guys. And it did technically get us in the hole by $20K at one point in our season. Like, we ran out of cash flow and we had to tap into our line of credit. But in the process of doing this, we have actually now learned what the true cost of that program would be for us. We had a better idea of, like, this is actually how many hours we need to have them here, or this is how we need to better utilize them, or we need to have them come a little bit later in the season, or we need to charge more. We need to make this much income in order to be able to afford this. And we really want to be able to afford this because we love it. It gave us so much more quality of life. And so we would never have learned those lessons unless we had jumped into the pool and tried it out and taken the risk. And yes, it was scary. And yes, we technically made a mistake. But now that I'm on the other side of it, I'm like, heck yeah, I'm glad that happened, because now I'm walking into next year with confidence. We're going to bring them back. And we raised our prices for our CSA, and we know what we need to do. And to me, that's a win, right? So that would be an example of, like, what was the lesson I learned? It wasn't just the actual factual data either of, like, oh, I need to have them here this many hours, but it was also some mindset stuff, like that I need to take risks in my business, because when I go into new territory, even when it's scary, something awesome is on the other side. And I can't tell you how many times that showed up in this journaling process, where I just saw this tendency I have to want to stay in the safe place. And in those times this year when I took risks and I went into a scary place and I was willing to make a mistake, there was blessing on the other side every time. And that was the lesson that I learned, right? Which gives me courage when I look into the future now and I'm looking at new things that I want to try, and I'm having that same feeling of fear. I'm like, oh, here I am again. What happens when I feel fear? What has happened traditionally? I cross the bridge, I get to the other side, and there's blessing, and I have to just trust in it. So, okay. So I want you to look at some of these quote unquote failures, and I just want you to ask yourself, how can I learn something from this? How was this happening for me, not to me? And if it's a repetitive pattern, like if this is a quote unquote failure or mistake that you feel like keeps showing up, then maybe you just haven't learned the lesson yet, right? What is the lesson that you need to learn?
Today's podcast is sponsored by my new webinar for beginning CSA farmers. Have you been wanting to start a vegetable CSA, but you're a little bit overwhelmed by all the things that you need to research to get started? After all, CSA involves a different kind of crop plan, managing customer expectations, and making sure you can have enough product to fill those boxes week after week. CSA is our farm's bread and butter. We've been doing our 18-week season for a long time, and it's about 60% of our farm's annual income. We are now consistently scoring an annual retention rate of 85%. But that didn't happen overnight. We made a lot of mistakes figuring out the production system, how to find the right clients and keep them, and frankly, how to make CSA profitable. Which is why I want to help new CSA farmers sidestep some of those expensive mistakes and get their CSAs stronger, faster. If you're a farmer that's thinking about starting a CSA, I want to invite you to a free webinar called The 3 Mistakes CSA Rookie Farmers Make and How to Avoid Them.
You can register at mydigitalfarmer.com/rookie. That's ROOKIE. And select from the time options that are available each week. This is a free webinar. It's designed to help new CSA farmers learn the framework for a profitable and resilient CSA. At the end of the webinar, I'll share some information about my online program, CSA Quick Start, designed to help vegetable growers start their CSA from scratch in just 60 days. CSA is now the bedrock of my business. And because of our clients' loyalty, we not only feel validated in our work, but we're able to feel financial security and create a season where the farm doesn't run our lives. I want this for you too. So register for my webinar at mydigitalfarmer.com/rookie. That's ROOKIE, and get your CSA started on the right foot. And now back to the show. Okay, so let's move on to question number 3. Okay, I love this one. This one is, what do you want to do more of next year? What I love about this question of what do you want to do more of next year, this helps you identify like your sweet spot. Like, where are you getting your energy from? What are you enjoying? Where's that life force coming from? Because I just really believe that if I come from a place of energy and excitement, that is when I create a life of abundance and prosperity. And I've noticed that big time with Digital Farmer. Like when I'm in my zone of genius, when I am teaching, when I am coaching, when I'm podcasting, like it is fun and I love it and I bring it, you know? And so I'm trying to figure out what are the things where I get excited, where I get energy, where I can't wait to do it, because that is where the momentum lives. Anytime you bring momentum into the room, you're going to bring energy. So is there something new that you want to try that you could turn into a pilot project this coming year, just for the sake of creating energy, you know? Or maybe it's something that one part of your job that you really enjoy a lot and it fuels you and you want to make sure that you spend more time doing that. Okay, so write that stuff down. This is going to go into that goal setting piece later when you figure out what does next year look like. If you know that you've got to if you love going to markets or you just see the profits rise when you're at the markets and you're loving it and you're a people person, then maybe you need to make sure that you're doing more of that in the future, that you are at a market. Or if you're like, oh man, like Kurt was telling me that he just wanted to have his own personal garden where he could experiment and try stuff and not be necessarily farming for the CSA or for our business, but having a place where he could play around, make mistakes, take risks. And he's like, I haven't had a personal garden in like 10 years. And so he did that this last year and it was really awesome. And he can't wait to do that again, right? So write that stuff down. What are the things that you want to do more of next year? And then you're going to ask, what do you want to do less of next year? Okay. What are the things you want to give away? If you could give up some of the jobs that you're doing right now, what would they be? You guys, this is a powerful question, and I know you're already answering them right now. Wherever you are right now, if you're in your tractor or in a car doing a delivery, or you're on a walk doing dishes, I just want you to speak it out into the world. What's that one thing right now that you know that rises to the top that you would give up from your list of chores or your duties or whatever? What would you give away? And maybe it's marketing. I hope it's not marketing, but if it is, that's okay. What are those projects that are draining you, that are distracting you? So one outcome that could come out of this question later on is that you might end up outsourcing that job you just said out loud to someone else. Okay, I did this a couple of years ago. After working through this exercise, I realized that I hated the bookkeeping. It was so draining. Like, I can do it. I know how to do it. But I hated it. I dreaded it. I would put it off and I would waste so much brain energy just thinking about how I had to do it and then not do it. Are you tracking with me? Do you ever do that? And it always ended up landing on Sundays when I had to do this job, filling out, doing payroll and doing the bills. And it would be like a 4-hour job. And I resented the fact that it was taking over my day of rest, right? Like, so I just really think of Sunday as a holy day for me. I really try to keep that mostly sacred and be with family and rest. And it was just eating up half the day. And all of a sudden, it would be 4 o'clock and I would be done with it. And I'm like, well, there went my Sunday. And I also don't think that I was very efficient at it either. Anyway, so I had this thought a couple of years ago. I'm like, what if I just tried giving this away to someone else? And as it so happens, there was a CSA member who's now one of my best friends who had kind of suggested this to me. She's like, hey, I'm a bookkeeper at the library, the local library in Elmore, and I'm looking for some extra hours. I'd be willing to do this. We could trade, like I would even trade for vegetables. And then, after we kind of max that out, you can pay me, but I think I could just do it with vegetables. And I was like, really? And so I was willing to consider it, and I ended up giving it away to her. And it was very difficult because I'm a little bit protective of my finances. I had all that stuff I had to deal with in my mind of like, well, I need to have my finger on the pulse of my business, of the finances, and that this is how I do it, by actually handling every check, handling every bill. What if I'm going to lose touch with the finances? I brought her on. I decided to do it as a pilot project. And it was one of the best things we've ever done. I now have my Sundays back. She gets it done way faster than I ever did. My business, my finances actually got better because she saw things that she could improve, right? She made recommendations. And I wasn't constantly thinking about the books and thinking about the money because I was always in the books. And so my whole anxiety level about the finances really evaporated, and we could operate from a place of power instead of worry. So that was a long-winded story, but that goal of, let me try hiring a bookkeeper came out of this question of what do I hate doing if I could give something away? What is draining my energy? Think about what that looks like for you. Maybe it means you want to drop a farmer's market, or maybe it means you want to drop a pickup site. So it's not just things that are draining you mentally and emotionally, but where is it taking you away from time that you should be spending somewhere else, right? This is an opportunity cost question as well. Is there something that you should be doing on the business, inside of your business, that would be more valuable, that would be more revenue generating? Is there something that only you can do that you're not doing because you're stuck doing all these other jobs that are sucking the life force out of you? This is hard work, my friends. It is scary to give some of this away, but this is the secret to all businesses that learn how to scale. They get a team. They hire a team. They find a way to take that step. And I remember the first time we paid somebody to work for us, that was really, really scary. We're like, but that money could be going into my pocket. Now I'm putting it into someone else's. Am I going to be... Listen, the time that they give you back, you can then use that time to either relax and earn your reward, or you can use that time to do the revenue generating activities in your business. Think about that question. And that is definitely a trust fall. That is a trust fall moment in your business when you finally take that leap. But I love this question. Write down the things you don't want to be doing anymore and just let it sit there. Okay, next one. We're on to question 5. What are you still holding on to from last year that is taking up space, either mentally, emotionally, physically? And then the follow-up question to this is, what will there be room for when you let that go? Okay, so this is designed to make you think about that opportunity cost question that I just brought up from the last one. So the last question, you're just supposed to write down, these are the things I want to let go. In this question, you're drilling down on the opportunity cost piece. If I could let go of that thing that I don't want to do, if I could let go of the thoughts and the practices that are not serving me anymore, what would be possible for you? What will there be room for when you let go of that limiting belief or that practice? That's a powerful question. And sometimes this is a tough one for me because I'm not in the future yet. I've learned, this is another little aside, as I've grown as a person and as an entrepreneur, I think differently now than I did 2 or 3 years ago. I just think differently. I have different behaviors as a result too, but I believe different things that would have been scary for me to believe a few years ago. And now I'm in this place and I'm like, Well, yeah, of course you have to hire somebody to do the things that you're not good at. That was a really bizarre thought for me many years ago when I was a solopreneur. And this question is kind of what helps spark some of this stuff. But it can be tough because you might not be able to imagine what a CEO, who's making $400,000 a year in revenue, or who's making, a business that's making $1 million a year, is thinking differently than a business that's making $400K a year, is thinking differently than a CEO who's making $100K a year. Okay, so you've got to learn how to think like the CEO does of the next level and practice those thoughts. And that's kind of what this question is getting at. So what are you still holding on to from last year that's taking up space? This could be a mindset thing, like a limiting belief that's keeping you from taking action. It could be a guilt thing, like an actual thing that you did that you have not let go of. Maybe it's a relationship that you broke up, that deteriorated, a business partnership that deteriorated. It could be a mistake you made with a client that went sour, and you just haven't let it go. You're still holding on to it, and you need to make peace with it. You need to figure out, what was the lesson I was supposed to learn from that, put it aside and move on, right? Maybe that's what's going on in this question. It could be a physical asset. It could be like the one that I thought of for us was, we have, like, our cooler space is so inefficient. We have 3 different coolers scattered around the property. And not only are they the wrong size, but they're in the wrong locations. And if we could start all over again and build our dream system, we would change how we did it, right? So we've got this one cooler that's just a little bit too small, but it's our main cooler. And we spend so much time with the pallet jack, moving things back in and out, just to get to stuff from the back. And we're just getting sick of that, right? That's just it's creating like negative energy in the space. And we've been talking about wanting to replace the coolers forever and ever. It's been on our wish list forever and ever. And so, this is an example of like something we're holding on to. Are we going to hold on to this cooler one more year, even though we know it's a problem? Are we just going to freaking handle it and deal with it and finally say, enough, I'm fixing this problem, right? So that's kind of another way you could take a stab at this question. Let me just share an example of something that I wrote down for this question. This was a mindset thing. I wrote down that I need to get comfortable with the no when I pitch offers, because I don't make enough offers. I think this is one of the reasons I could be making more revenue. It's because I'm afraid that people will not buy, and I'm going to make that mean something, right? So whenever I pitch an offer and someone says no, I take that as validation that I'm not good enough, or that my offer wasn't good enough, or that I'm not worth it, my product's not worth it. And then when I believe that, I don't keep asking people. I don't go out and make the offer. I don't go for it, right? And then, of course, I'm not going to make more sales if I don't make offers. So I've learned this year that that's something I'm holding on to, this fear of the no, and that I have to be more comfortable with the no. I actually have to go for the no. I have to practice getting no's so that I can be more comfortable with them. And I think that will lead to more revenue. And I actually wrote this down. I wrote, yeses live in the land of no. Go write that down on a Post-it note. Yeses live in the land of no. That was a big aha moment for me this year. And I want to let go of this fear of the no and embrace this idea that yes, my yeses live in the land of no. So I've got to go into the land of no. I've got to get a ton of no's. I've got to get like 35 no's for every 10 yeses and be comfortable with that, because that's just the way it is. Okay, cool. I hope this question gets you thinking. It's one of my favorites. All right. The next one is, what are your 5% revenue generating activities? This one's going to be fun for you. As the CEO of your business, you should know the top 5% activities that drive your business's revenue, so that you make sure that you are spending your time there. Or if you're not spending your time there, you've got someone else who's spending their time there. I have found that we're guilty of this too. When I make my list of things to do for the week and list of things to do for the day, I tend to put things on the top of that list that maybe aren't the most important things that I need to be working on in my business. Do you do that too? I'll be like, oh, this feels easier to do. There's less resistance. That looks like a quick thing I can knock out. I'll feel good about getting something accomplished, when really what I need to do is spend some time working on that bigger thing that's actually going to solve a system or a workflow issue that's blocking the revenue from forming in my business, right? So part of this question is going back to that one we already journaled on, right? That's saying, what do you love working on? What are the things that you want to be doing more of? But there may not always be a correlation. There might be some things that you love doing, but that aren't the things that are actually generating the primary revenue in your business. You got to know what's making you money, guys. So if some of you guys are frustrated, like, oh, I'm not earning enough, I'm not making enough, some of it, I'm not saying all of it, but some of it might just be that you don't know the activities that your business requires of you in order for the revenue to generate. Or you might know them, but you're not spending the majority of your time doing those things. Your business requires things from you, okay? How does it need you to show up? Listen, I know you may hate writing emails to your clients. I know you may hate the idea of growing your email list, but I'm here to tell you that for many of you, if you spent time learning how to do email marketing and you wrote that weekly email and made an offer or learned how to connect with clients so you could make offers that didn't feel weird, that is where the money is. I talk to so many people on this podcast when I interview them, and I ask them that question of like, where's the traction in your marketing outlets? Where are you gaining that revenue from? And the majority of them say email marketing. So, I know this about my own business, that when I send emails, we make revenue. Okay. So that tells me that even though I may not enjoy sitting down and doing that practice, I'm going to do it. I'm the best one to do it right now. I'm not outsourcing that. But if you don't know how to write great emails, maybe you need to hire someone who's really good at that, because that's what's going to create the revenue in your business, right? These are the questions you just kind of need to ask yourself. For Kurt, if he were answering this question, the 5% revenue generating activities, he would talk about things like, well, I have learned that if I don't get control of managing my team and getting everything set up for them in advance, then I burn through money like crazy, right? I'm spending money on labor that I don't really need to be spending on, right? The tasks they're doing are not the right tasks. So if I take the time to really think thoughtfully about, this is what needs to get done, these are the things that are not important, and I put my team on them and I make sure they have all the tools they need in order to do it efficiently, and I set a time limit and they get it done, like that is a way that we keep a handle on our finances. Or he's also talked about how even things like planning his spray regimen. We're a certified organic farm and we have a certain schedule. I don't know how, I don't understand it, but I know about it, right? I'm not the applicator, so I don't get what he's doing, but he talks about how if he misses spray windows, it has a huge effect on the quality of our product, or we may not even be able to sell the product, and that is lost revenue. And he's learned to prioritize, like, I've got to know those windows and I've got to do them. He's the only person that can do that job on the farm. And if he misses that window, or if he puts something else first, or if he's like, I really don't feel like going out and spraying, it's late, the wind's died down, but it's late and it's dark and I don't want to do it, and then he doesn't do it, well, then we get screwed later, right? So he's just like, these are my 5% revenue generating activity. These are the things I have to do. These are the things that matter. And he holds those sacred. So that is a question I want you to ponder. What are the things that you've got to get right in order to make money? There is a short list. There's a lot of things that make you money, but there's that 5% that really matter. Figure out what those are for you, okay? And write those down. Okay, I have 2 more questions. I'm running out of time, so I need to blast through these. The next one is a power question. I actually recommend that you stop here and you take a break. And you do the next two questions in like a second session. Okay. That's what I did. This next question is so simple, and yet it's so hard. Here's what it is. What do you want? What do you want? I want you to spend some time really thinking about all the facets of your life, not just your business here. What kind of life do you want? Think of your relationships, your time, your personal time, your personal goals and dreams outside of the business, your self-concept, your quality of life, your material possessions, your beliefs and your thoughts, the kind of person you want to be. And I find that most farmers I talk to are not living their dream life yet. In fact, maybe this is you. Raise your hand right now if you feel like this is you. A lot of farmers I talk to feel like they don't have their own lives, that the business runs them. And they got into farming, ironically, so that they could have freedom, but they feel trapped. Either they're not making enough money, or you don't have enough time with your kids, or you're working late at night, you're maybe not even eating very well, and you don't have time with friends. You aren't able to take vacations and rest. You're exhausted physically because you're not sleeping enough, right? Like, there's a lot of things that go into our quality of life, and we need to address those at some point. And this question is meant to help you do that. What do you want? So here's some things that I wrote down on this list. I want to feel like I'm making a significant impact in the world with farmers. I want to have a great marriage. I want to raise my children up into men of God with strong skills in relationships and work. I want to hang out with my best friends on a regular basis. I want to travel a lot. I want to teach. Okay, so these are things that when I say, what do I want? Like, I thought about the things I love to do, the things that light me up. I want a podcast editor. I want to update my bedroom. It's just so ugly, you guys. It's been 15 years, and I want to at least paint the wood paneling. I want to invest in my personal growth by joining a mastermind. I want to feel balance in my life. I want to feel and trust that I am abundant. I want to see the abundance that I'm swimming in, okay? Those were some of the things that I wrote down. But you could also have very physical things like, I want a new cooler. I want a new farm truck. But I want to challenge you with this question because we've already worked on some of that stuff with the earlier questions. This what do you want question is meant to make you zoom out and really look at your life and ask yourself, is farming, is what I'm doing right now, the way I'm doing my business, is it allowing me to meet the other goals that I have for my life? Because you're bigger than just a farmer. You are more than a farmer. I know that's a huge part of your identity, but you're also a wife or a husband or a partner or a son or a daughter or a parent or in my case, a believer. Like, there are other things that I want to accomplish in my life, and the business is just a part of it. So when you get clear about what you want and you write that down, this is going to become it's going to inform your goals, because it should inform your goals. It absolutely should. I like to think of my life as many projects that I'm working on, many plates that I'm spinning. And if I don't know what plates are important to me to keep spinning, then they will fall and I will feel incomplete as a person. When I identify the things that are important to me through this question, what do I want? It has really helped me say, okay, my marriage, having intimacy with Kurt, in my marriage, like, that is a project for me. That is a plate. And when I see it and I know it and I name it, and I filter it through my journaling process on a weekly basis, I'm making sure that I do something to take care of that. You will not do that if you don't take the time in this process to write out what you want. So this is a powerful question. I want you to spend some time here. And then finally, the last question is, what are your goals for next year? There's the big question. All right, that's where everything's going. What results do you want to produce in your life next year? And you will find that this question is very rich if you've worked through the questions before it. And you'll probably come up with maybe 5 to 10, which is what usually happens for me. And I have learned, I write them all down, but then I really try to circle the wagons around like 5 of them. And I try to put 1, maybe 2 in each quarter of my business. Sometimes it doesn't work out that way, but if it's an outright project that I want to build something or develop something, I'm only ever working on something pretty significantly once per quarter, but I'm not even mapping them out in my calendar yet. This question is just designed to get you to figure out what are the goals that matter to you based on those powerful questions that you just journaled on or went through. Where do you want to be by next December? So you could choose to make them be all business related if you want to, or you could include some personal projects based on that last question of what do I want? And here's just an example of some of the ones that showed up on my list. So on my farm business list, I wrote down, I want to hire an additional store packer so that I don't have to be out in the pack shed twice a week packing store orders. That is a huge opportunity cost piece for me where I just feel like I generate so much more revenue for my business using my time elsewhere. I don't need to be out packing store orders. So for me, it makes sense to hire someone, at $16 an hour to do that job for me. And then I can use that same hour and go and make $70 an hour doing something else. You see how that's a win for me? So that was something that showed up on that list from the farm business. For Digital Farmer, one of the things that I wrote down was find a podcast editor. I love podcasting. It's my favorite thing. I'll be honest. It's my favorite thing. I love to teach. It's easy for me to do. The part I love about it, though, is getting in front of the camera and just teaching and talking. What I don't enjoy so much is all the other stuff that happens afterwards, the post-production piece where you have to listen to it again, find out find the errors, cut them out, stitch the sponsorship piece in. I mean, that's a 3-hour process every week for me right now. And it would be awesome if I could whittle that down. I know there will always be a little bit of stuff in that I have to do, but I would love to be able to whittle that down and give most of that away to someone else and just make them responsible for getting it into the podcast editor, planner, and release it into the world. And so that all I have to do is show up and do what I do best, which is teach and get those extra 2 hours back. So that's kind of an example of how I drilled down and got a very specific goal from all of that work I did before. Now, I encourage you to stay away from vague goals that are hard to measure. Like, I want to get more time back in my week for personal time. So that's definitely something that comes out of my process of journaling every year. But I need to get specific and say, well, how am I going to actually do that? What's one specific thing I'm going to take a risk on or that I'm going to do to try and meet that goal? So your goal should be a SMART goal, right? A specific goal, measurable, achievable, and something that you can actually get those results in time. So, for example, one of my goals is to spend more time one of my projects, I should say, is to have a great marriage with Kurt. So Intimacy with Kurt is the name of that project. And I have written down, I will go out on a monthly date with Kurt 7 times a year. Now, I know that sounds funny because I just said monthly date 7 times a year. I realize that I'm not probably going to meet that monthly goal every year. So for me, success is if I can hit that target 7 times in the year. That gives me something that I can look back on at the end of the season and say, did I do it 7 times? Yes or no? And I can feel like, all right, I made progress in that area. Okay, so try to create a specific measure create a measure so that you know whether or not that objective or that goal has been realized. And again, I encourage you to limit the number of goals that you have from this process to 1 to 2 per quarter, depending on how busy you are. I just feel like putting too many on there is going to overwhelm you. Slow and steady wins the race, my friends. Like, our business was not built overnight. We are a 15-year-old business. Every year we have chosen a few things to focus on. There were years where we didn't do that, where we tried to do everything and we got very little accomplished. So just try to build one element at a time and slowly build those workflows and systems that make your business strong. Okay, I have one more bonus question. I want you to write out an answer to this question. What new habits will you have to adopt to win this game? What's a weekly habit that's required of you? What's a monthly habit? Maybe a daily habit? Brainstorm some answers to that. You will have to show up and be a different person and think differently if you want to reach those goals. You just will. And so getting clear about what kind of a person do I have to become in order to be successful at that goal that I'm setting. So for me, I'm going to just give you an example of what I wrote down. I said I have to be a person that checks my data every month. I have to become religious and psycho about that. If I want to be making decisions based on data, then I need to be looking at my email stats. Where are people clicking? I need to know my sales stats better in my online store and therefore be able to adjust accordingly and pivot throughout the year. I have to make more offers. I wrote that down too. That needs to become a new habit. I must become more comfortable with the no, so I have to make more offers. And I can even quantify that. I can set a goal like try to make an offer every week in your email. Find a way to do it, even if it's uncomfortable. I must commit to the weekly or biweekly email. I must make a social media workflow plan. You guys, my social media has been horrible the last few months. I have not been consistent with it. And I'm committed now to figuring out a workflow so that I get that done. If I want to keep that top of funnel marketing going strong, I have to at least have something going there. And so that's something I wrote down as well. That must become a habit that I can control. I can put boundaries around it, but I do need to be disciplined about it. I must journal every day. I wrote that down. That's been huge for me. I must prioritize celebrating my wins and rewarding myself. That's like a self-care piece that I've learned. Part of that is those vacations, right? Not being afraid to spend the money that I actually earn. And I must stay disciplined to my daily/weekly to-do list workflows that I have actually created. Okay, those were just some examples that I wrote down, but you will need to become a different person than you are. You will need to think differently. You will need to have different behaviors. And so what are some of those habits that you'll have to put into your life in order to be successful? All right, well, there you have it. This process, these questions have helped me enormously with getting clear on what my goals are for the next year. Do you want me to review the questions? Let me do that real quick before I sign off. Okay, number 1, list everything that has happened to you in the last 12 months related to your business. Number 2, what were the lessons of each thing you experienced that you can take into next year? Number 3, what do you want to do more of next year? And what do you want to do less of? What could you give up if you could? Next question, what are you still holding on to from last year that is taking up space? And what will there be room for when you let that go? That's the opportunity cost question. What are your 5% revenue generating activities? What do you want? What kind of life do you want? What are your goals for next year? What results do you want to produce? What measure will you use to know that your objective has been realized? And what new habits will you have to adopt to win your game? All right, you guys. That's all I got today. Your homework today is to use those questions. You don't have to use them all. Maybe pick out the ones that really resonated with you and just try journaling them out or talking them out with your partner and see if you get something valuable out of that process. All right, I'm back. I hope that just blew your mind, and I invite you to take some time this December and work through those questions. I promise you, you're going to be enriched and blessed by the process. I will put those questions in the show notes at mydigitalfarmer.com/241. If you liked today's episode, would you please go capture the link and share it with someone? Just text it to them and say, hey, you got to go through this. You got to listen to this and do this process for yourself this coming winter. And I would love it if you would leave me a rating or a review for the show. I have this internal goal of trying to get a certain number of reviews for the podcast, and I'm coming to the end of my year, so help me get to that goal and just go quick, give me a few stars, or say a few words about what you like about the show and help me reach my goal. I'm really, really close. I would love that. Now, if you want to get onto my email list, I have a great curated list of marketing resources I'd love to send your way, like a crash course in farm marketing. You can grab that by going to mydigitalfarmer.com/subscribe. Don't forget, I'm also now on Instagram at mydigitalfarmer. I'd love to connect with you there. You can send me a DM, tell me what you liked about the show. And thanks for joining me today. Have a great week, and I'll catch you next time. Bye-bye.